A July afternoon in Asheville. Soft summer light spilled through the diner window. The ceiling fan turned slowly. Daniel Hayes had waited 40 minutes, gray flannel sleeves pushed to his elbows. Claire Whitfield walked in, the calm of a woman braced for a lie. He stood. She offered her hand. He did not take it. He pulled out her chair first, then poured iced coffee into her glass before she could reach. Ice clinked. Her hand froze mid-air. She had come to expose him. She had not prepared for the possibility that she was the one who would be undone. 48 hours earlier, on the top floor of the Whitfield Holdings Tower in Charlotte, summer hung clear and blue beyond the glass. Green leaves stacked thick on the trees along the street below. Claire signed the last page of a $300 million deal, slid the folder back across the desk, and only then noticed the magazine her assistant had left on the corner of it. She picked it up. A glossy spread from the Foundation Gala 2 weeks back, her own face in the center of it, half turned toward a CEO she barely remembered shaking hands with. He had sent an unsolicited offer that morning to buy out her father's foundation outright. She tore the page in half. Margaret Cole stood in the doorway, 62 years old, the same calm she had worn for Claire's father before her. She did not comment on the torn page. "I want to meet someone who does not know my name," Claire said. "Find me a blind date service. Choose the most ordinary man on the list. I will go as Claire Bennett. A waitress from Greenville." Margaret folded her hands. "You play this game and somebody could get hurt. If he is kind, I will see it. If not, I keep walking." Margaret exhaled and laid a thin manila folder on the desk. Daniel Hayes, 39, high school physics teacher in Asheville, widower, one daughter, 8 years old. Wife died 3 years ago in a single car accident on Highway 26. Claire opened the folder, scanned a single page and closed it again. Set it for Thursday evening. The same hour, 200 miles west, Daniel Hayes was setting the table in a low cedar house on the outskirts of Asheville. The windows were open. Cicadas rose and fell in the yard. Late afternoon sun came in across the floorboards in long honey-colored bars. Lily sat at the kitchen table folding paper. Her hair was tied back unevenly. She was working on a white crane the size of a walnut. "Light supper tonight, Peanut," Daniel said. He set down a chicken salad, a small bowl of cucumber slices, and a plate of carrots cut into stars. The bread came out of the oven smelling like butter and garlic. Lily kept folding. "Will you be home soon, Daddy?" "I promise." She held out the finished crane to him. "Take this one. Paper cranes go with the saddest person in the room. You told me that." He took the crane carefully and slipped it into his shirt pocket. His sister Jenna arrived 10 minutes later, already in her sandals, already shooing him toward the door. 3 years, Dan," she said. "You have to start living again." He stopped at a red light on Tunnel Road. The little white crane sat in the cup holder beside him. For a long beat he considered turning around. Then the light changed and he kept driving. He reached the diner 30 minutes early. He did not order. He sat in the corner booth where he could see the door without staring at it, and he laid his hands flat on the formica because his wife had once said that nervous men should keep their hands where they could see them. He remembered her saying that, and he smiled at the table for a single second before his face went still again. He remembered her once telling him that a kind man was a man who waited. When the woman walked in and finally sat down across from him, she asked what he did for a living. "High school physics," he said. "Nothing special." The camera of his mind held on the lie. Not about himself. About the words "nothing special." She watched him over the rim of her glass. "If you won $10 million tomorrow," she asked, "what would you do with it?" Daniel laughed once, quietly. "I would pay off Lily's dental loan and buy a better telescope." She thought he was joking. He was not. He talked about his daughter the way some men talked about a country they had visited once and never gotten over. Not bragging, just telling. He told her how Lily had once asked why clouds did not fall, and how he had drawn the atmospheric pressure equation for her on the back of a paper napkin, how she had understood it on the second try. Claire kept her face still. She had interviewed presidents and senators. She knew when she was being charmed and when she was being met. "Where did you study physics?" she asked, sharper than she meant. He paused half a second. "MIT, a long time ago." Under the table, her thumb moved on her phone. She typed 2 words to Margaret. "Look him up." He noticed her typing. He said nothing. He only refilled her glass from the pitcher of iced coffee the waitress had left, then refilled his own, and waited. She looked at the glass for a long moment before she touched it. Most men who let her type under the table either asked who she was texting or began to perform for whoever might be listening. Daniel did neither. He looked instead at the framed black-and-white photograph hanging on the wall behind her of a steam locomotive crossing a wooden trestle in the Smokies somewhere in 1946. He looked at it the way a man looks at something that does not need him to admire it. When Claire excused herself to the restroom, Margaret called back. Her voice was low and careful. "Claire, the man you are sitting with is not a teacher." Daniel Hayes, 39, was the lead program engineer on Lockheed Martin's next-generation satellite propulsion project. Compensation, $1.9 million a year. He filed his resignation 1 week after his wife's funeral. No consulting, no stock options. He sold the house in Bethesda, moved to Asheville, and took a public school job. Claire stood in the narrow-tiled hallway and held the phone away from her ear for a long second. When she came back to the booth, she sat down more slowly than she had stood. Daniel looked up. "You all right?" "Fine. Keep going." The cloud equation. He kept going. He did not know he had just been undressed by a database. He talked about Lily's first telescope, a $40 refractor from a yard sale. About teaching her to find Saturn's rings, about the night she had cried because the stars were so far away that some of them had already died. Claire listened the way she had not listened to anyone in a long time. Without calculating, without preparing her counter. When the check came, he reached for it before she could. "Let me pay my half," she said. "I invited you. This is my date." The sentence dropped between them like a small stone in still water. Outside the diner, the sky over Patton Avenue was still bright at 8:30. Summer in the Blue Ridge stretched its evenings out as if reluctant to end. They stood 2 steps apart on the sidewalk. "If you want to see me again," he said, "I will be here." She nodded. She did not promise. In the back of the rental car driving up to the Biltmore, she put her phone to her ear and spoke to Margaret with a voice that did not sound like the voice she used in boardrooms. "I came to expose him, Margaret," she said. "He took me apart piece by piece tonight, and he didn't even know he was doing it." There was a long silence on the line. Margaret did not ask if she was all right. Margaret had been waiting for this call for 4 years. He texted her Wednesday morning, "School fundraiser Saturday. Outdoor. Lily will be there, if you are free." It was the most unpressured sentence anyone had sent her in years. She read it 4 times before she answered. She drove up in the cheaper of her 2 rental cars, hair pulled back into a plain knot, no jewelry. There was still something about her that made people slow down as they walked past. She stood at the far edge of the lawn anyway. The elementary school had pitched canvas shades between 2 old white oaks. String lights ran from branch to branch even though the sun was hours from setting. Folding tables lined the asphalt drive, grilled corn smoked on a steel drum. A girl was selling lemonade from a card table for $1 a cup. A small figure broke from a group of children and ran straight to Claire as though she had been watching for her. "Daddy said you were a friend," Lily said. She held out a blue paper crane. "Here, I made an extra one for you." Claire took the crane in her open palm. "Come see the physics booth," Lily said, already taking her hand. "I helped Daddy build it." They walked together under the oaks. The booth was a folding table with 2 homemade demonstrations, a pendulum made from a sewing weight and a length of string, an orbital model put together out of dowels, marbles, and bicycle spokes. Lily explained both of them. She used her father's exact phrasing, only smaller. Daniel appeared a few minutes later, in a faded blue flannel rolled to his elbows, and a pair of jeans that had seen more summers than the school had. A loose ring of 4th and 5th graders followed him to the open field, where he set up a water rocket from an empty soda bottle, a pump, and an inch of red food coloring. The rocket cleared the oaks and arced into the cloudless sky. The children whooped. "Mr. Hayes," one boy asked, "have you ever seen a real rocket?" Daniel smiled. "A little bit." Claire stood 20 feet away under the dappled shade. She heard it. Later, when the crowd thinned, they sat side by side on the wooden bleachers at the edge of the football field. The sky turned slow pink and orange. Cicadas pulled their long wires of sound through the warm air. "You do not belong in Asheville," he said evenly. "I am not asking where you are from. I am just naming what I see." She said nothing. He did not push. Her phone buzzed against her thigh. Victor Lanning. She let it ring twice before stepping a few yards off into the grass. Monday board meeting, Lanning's voice said. You will be there, or I will personally bring the motion to wind down your father's foundation. She killed the call without answering. When she came back to the bleachers, Daniel did not ask. As the lights came on under the canvas, Lily appeared at Claire's side. She placed another small paper crane into Claire's hand and folded the fingers closed around it. Keep this one too, Lily said. Daddy says paper cranes go with the saddest person in the room. Claire walked to the rental car alone. She sat behind the wheel for 3 full minutes before she started the engine. She did not check her phone. She did not return Lanning's call. She tucked the crane into the inner pocket of her coat, against her chest, and felt, for the first time in many years, that she was carrying something nobody else had assigned a value to. Monday morning. 40th floor of the Whitfield Holdings Tower in Charlotte. The board sat in 3 rows of leather around a long walnut table. Claire had flown back at dawn. She looked composed. She also looked tired in a way no makeup quite hid. Lanning rose smoothly. He spoke for 8 minutes about market conditions, about the obligation of the board to maximize shareholder value, about the inefficiency of charitable assets in a turbulent quarter. He proposed dissolving the Whitfield Foundation and redirecting the capital to an M&A opportunity he could not yet name publicly. Claire opposed. The vote was deferred by 1 week. When she left the building at noon, the heat off the granite plaza was hard and white. A photographer was already waiting at the corner. He was not from any wire service. He took 6 clean shots of her walking toward her car with her phone in her hand and her face exposed. By evening, the photograph was a headline. Harris Claire Whitfield spotted in working-class disguise, mental breakdown rumors grow. The piece quoted an unnamed board source. It mentioned blind date services. It used the word erratic 3 times. Lanning had tipped them. The purpose was clear: to force her out of whatever shelter she had built and into the daylight, where she could be controlled again. 200 miles west, Daniel sat at the kitchen table grading papers. The window was open. A small box fan turned at low speed on the counter. Crickets had started up in the yard. Lily was asleep down the hall. The bedroom door was open 3 inches the way she liked it. His phone lit up. A text from a colleague at school. A link, then 4 words. This is your blind date, isn't it? He opened the link. He read the headline. He looked at the photograph for a long time. He did not become angry. He did not call her. He did not put his phone away in frustration. He set it face down on the table. He thought, briefly, about what his wife would have said. She had always understood that the world was full of people who wore second skins because their first skin had been used against them. She had married a man who once wore a second skin himself. She had been the one who taught him to take it off. After a minute he stood up, went to the bookshelf in the living room, and took down the white paper crane Lily had folded for him the night of the date. He carried it back to the kitchen and set it down beside the phone. The yellow ceiling light caught on the folded wing. He picked up his red pen and went back to grading papers. At the Biltmore that same hour, Claire sat at the writing desk in her suite with the laptop open to the tabloid story. She did not cry. She drafted a text 3 times and deleted each one. The first was a defense. The second was an apology. The third was an explanation. In the end, she sent 6 words. I would still like to see you this weekend if that is possible. His answer came 4 minutes later. Same diner. Saturday. 8 o'clock. Not a word about the photograph. Not a word about her name. She read the message twice and closed the laptop. Outside the window, the long blue dusk of a Carolina July sat over the mountains and refused to fall. She left the inner pocket of her coat untouched. The blue paper crane was still inside it. Saturday night. The diner on Patton Avenue. The door was propped open. The neon open sign threw a low red onto the sidewalk. Inside, the warm air smelled of coffee and frying onions. Claire arrived on time. She had prepared 3 explanations on the drive over. None of them came out of her mouth. Daniel arrived 2 minutes later, carrying a small insulated bottle. He sat down across from her, opened the bottle, and poured into a paper cup. Lightly sweet iced tea, not the diner's coffee. The bottle had ice in it. He must have made it at home before driving over. He slid the cup across to her. Whoever you are, he said, you look tired today. She did not break in any big visible way. Her shoulders simply lowered one notch. Her two hands trembled very slightly around the paper cup. He did not ask. He said, "I saw the photo." She nodded once. She still could not quite believe he was still in the seat across from her. "I do not need to know what name you go by," he said. "I only need to know that when you are here, you are here." She looked up at him. "My name is Claire Whitfield." He did not look surprised. "I know. Everyone at Lockheed knew your father's name." The silence between them filled the booth like water. Her right hand and his left hand lay flat on the formica, 3 inches apart, not touching. They paid the check and walked past the closed antique shops on Lexington, across the iron bridge over the French Broad River. The sky was still light at almost 9. The river ran flat and slow and reflected the long pink-purple of the western sky. He told her, in pieces, about his wife. He did not say much. He said her name had been Sarah. He said she had taught 3rd grade for 11 years, at the same elementary school where he now coached the science fair. He said that she had once told him, the year before she died, that the thing she feared most was that he would forget how to be kind if she were gone. "I did not forget," he said. Claire looked out at the water. "I came here to investigate you," she said. "I think I should have been investigating myself." He stopped walking on the wooden footbridge over a side channel of the river. "You do not owe me your last name," he said. "You owe yourself the truth." She did not answer. She watched the slow movement of the water under her feet, and felt, for the first time in years, that the ground had not moved beneath her. The water was the only thing that was moving. She let herself stand there and feel the difference. He walked her back to her car. He did not touch her. He nodded once when she said good night. Back at the Biltmore, she did not go to bed. She sat at the desk in her suite and wrote a list by hand on hotel stationery. The first column was every action she had taken in 12 years to protect Whitfield Holdings. The second column was every action she had not taken because she had been afraid of what she would find. The second column was longer than the first. She closed the notebook and laid it flat. The paper crane sat on the base of the desk lamp, watching her like a small patient witness. Monday morning. Lanning moved early. He filed an emergency motion through outside counsel before 9 o'clock. Mental capacity review of Claire Whitfield as principal trustee. Grounds, in order. Erratic absences, use of pseudonyms in personal life, public photographic evidence of altered behavior. Refusal to engage with board-approved romantic introductions. If the motion passed, Claire's voting rights would be suspended for 90 days pending evaluation. 90 days was enough. In 90 days, Lanning could dissolve the foundation, force the M&A, and reposition the cash before any court could stop him. Margaret read the filing in her office at 7:45. She walked into Claire's office at 7:47. "He is moving today," she said. Claire put down her coffee. "How long do I have?" "Friday. Special session. He wants it on the record before quarterly disclosure." At 8:06, Margaret's private email pinged. Sender unknown. Subject line, 2 words. For Claire, the attachment was 14 pages. Internal correspondence between Victor Lanning and a broker named Halloran at Sterling Mead Capital. Short positions on Whitfield Holdings common stock, opened 3 weeks before Lanning had drafted the foundation dissolution motion, closed within 24 hours of each successive board leak. Margaret stood very still in the doorway. The sender's address resolved on the second read. Rachel Hayes, Senior Analyst, Sterling Mead. Margaret dialed the number at the bottom of the email. The voice on the other end was low and steady. A woman in her mid-30s. "My name is Rachel Hayes," she said. "I have been watching Victor Lanning for 2 years. I never planned to involve Miss Whitfield. I am sending this now because he has moved against her. You need to know one thing before I send anything else. I am not doing this only as a Sterling Mead employee. Daniel Hayes is my brother-in-law." Margaret sat down without realizing she had. 10 years ago, Rachel said, Victor Lanning tried to bribe Daniel on the Lockheed program. $200,000 in cash through a shell consultancy to look the other way on a flawed propulsion contract. Daniel reported it to the SEC. Lanning was barred from aerospace contracting for 5 years. He has never forgotten Daniel's name. She paused. "I worked at Sterling Mead during those years. I watched him build it back. He took the same patterns into asset management. He found families where the next generation was already exhausted, and he made himself useful inside the gap. He found your firm 2 years ago. I started keeping records the week I recognized his pattern. Margaret exhaled slowly. He is not attacking Claire because of the company. He is attacking both of them in the same room. The line went quiet. 200 miles to the west. Daniel did not know any of it yet. He was at home in the long, late summer afternoon, sitting cross-legged on the living room rug while Lily showed him how to fold a new pattern. A phoenix, she called it. The folds were harder than the cranes. He kept getting one corner wrong. She laughed at him for the first time in days. He laughed back. That afternoon at 4, Claire called Margaret from the closed door of her office. "Call the special session," she said. "Friday morning, 10 o'clock. I want Rachel Hayes in the room. I want Daniel Hayes in the room. But Daniel only comes if he chooses to come. Do you understand me?" "I understand." "And Margaret. Pull every transaction Lanning has touched since my father got sick. I want the whole picture." Margaret paused. "Claire, he is not trying to ruin you. He is trying to harvest you." There was a long silence on Claire's end of the line. The exhaustion went out of her face. Something sharper moved in. Wednesday at noon, a gray sedan with North Carolina plates and a teacher's parking decal pulled into the loading dock of the Whitfield Holdings Tower. Daniel got out. He was wearing the same gray flannel and the same metal-framed glasses he had worn the night of the date. He carried nothing. The summer sun came straight down off the glass facade and bounced once onto his shoulder. The lobby guard stepped in front of him at the security desk. "Help you, sir?" Daniel handed over his North Carolina driver's license. Daniel Hayes. "I am here to see Claire Whitfield." "Appointment?" "No." The guard smirked. "Sir, Miss Whitfield does not take walk-ins." Daniel did not smile. "Tell her the physics teacher is here." The guard's expression flickered. He picked up the radio. 2 floors up in a private meeting with 3 attorneys, Margaret heard the call come through her earpiece. She stood up in the middle of a sentence, said, "Excuse me," and walked out. Claire came down alone. No security detail. The elevator doors opened on the marble lobby, and she stepped out into a column of sunlight falling from the skylight above. They stood 10 feet apart. Lily was not there. Lily was at Jenna's house decorating cupcakes for a neighbor's birthday. Claire spoke first. "You did not have to come." "I know," Daniel said. "That is why I came." She watched him. He went on. "Rachel called me this morning. She told me everything. About Lanning. About what he is trying to do to you. About what he tried to do to me 10 years ago. She thinks I should know. She is right." Claire said nothing. "I am not here to save you," Daniel said. "You do not need to be saved. I am here so you know you are not standing alone." She held the silence the way she had held the paper crane in her coat pocket. She had been carrying the question for 10 days. "Why didn't you walk away when you saw the photograph?" He took a moment. "The first night, at the diner, when I poured the coffee, you flinched. Rich people do not flinch when somebody pours coffee for them. Hurt people flinch. I did not stay because you were a Whitfield. I stayed because somewhere along the way you had been a person nobody poured coffee for." She did not answer with words. She held out her hand, not to shake. Just an open palm, level between them, fingers loose. He placed his hand on top of hers. He did not interlace their fingers, he just pressed. There was no charge in it. There was nothing showy. It was the same quality of touch a man uses on the shoulder of a friend who has just heard the worst news of his life. It said, "I am here." It said, "I have time." It did not say anything else. Margaret, watching from 20 feet away near the elevator bank, turned her back to give them the room. After a long minute, Claire said quietly, "Friday. Board meeting. I would like you to sit in the gallery." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Not to use you," she said quickly. "I would never use you. I want Lanning to see 2 stories in one room. He has spent 10 years thinking he buried both of them separately." Daniel considered it for 3 seconds. "All right." She did not thank him. He did not need her to. They walked out of the lobby together as far as the glass doors. Then they parted on the sidewalk and went in opposite directions under the bright noon sun. Margaret stood by the elevator bank and watched their reflections in the glass slide apart. She knew, in the way she had known her father's daughter for 30 years, that Friday's room was going to break open. Friday at 10 in the morning. The 40th floor boardroom held 12 directors around a walnut table the length of a small car. Outside the windows, the July sky over Charlotte was clear and high. White cumulus stood frozen above the river. Lanning sat at the far end with 2 outside counsel behind him. He looked calm. He looked like a man who had already counted his votes. Claire entered with Margaret on her right, and a slim woman with a laptop on her left. She introduced the woman to the room without explanation. Rachel Hayes, senior analyst, Sterling Mead Capital. She is here as a witness. Lanning's mouth tightened slightly. He recovered. He presented the motion to evaluate Claire's mental capacity. He spoke for 12 minutes. He used the photograph. He used the blind date service. He used the word erratic 3 more times. Claire did not counter. She nodded once to Margaret. Margaret put a flash drive into the conference computer. The screen filled with 14 pages of email between Lanning and Halloran of Sterling Mead. Short positions opened, closed, opened again, each one timed within hours of a board leak that Lanning had personally controlled. The room went absolutely still. Lanning stood. "Those documents are forgeries. I will see legal action by the end of the week." Claire's voice did not rise. "Those documents are corroborated by Rachel Hayes, senior analyst at Sterling Mead, whom your own firm employs. The SEC was notified at 7 o'clock this morning." For half a second Lanning hung in the air without a script. Then he found one. "You are running a $4 billion foundation," he said, "and you are dating an unnamed physics teacher you met through a blind date app. I can produce photographs. I can produce records. I can produce his name." Claire let the silence stretch 1 beat longer than was comfortable. Then she walked to the side door and opened it. Daniel stepped into the room. Lanning's face froze in pieces. The eyes first, then the corners of the mouth, then the rest of it, dragged backwards into a memory 10 years old. He recognized the name before he recognized the face. Claire said, in a flat, careful voice, "Daniel Hayes. Former lead program engineer, Lockheed Martin Satellite Propulsion, the man who in 2015 reported the attempted bribery that resulted in Mr. Lanning's 5-year ban from aerospace contracting. He is here today as my guest." Daniel did not speak. He walked the length of the room and sat down in the empty seat beside Claire. Lanning sat back down. Both of his weapons, the slander of her name and the anonymity of the man beside her, had collapsed in the same breath. The motion went to a vote, 11-1 against. Lanning's own vote was the one. A second motion followed, brought by Margaret on behalf of the trustees. Suspension of Victor Lanning from board duties pending SEC review. 12-0. The directors began to gather their folders. Lanning sat without moving. As the room emptied, Margaret leaned close to Claire and spoke in a voice only Claire could hear. "2 stories met in one room," she said, "and only one of them was true." Claire did not answer. She was watching Daniel walk to the window. He was looking down at the river. Lanning resigned by Saturday afternoon. The SEC sent its first formal letter on Monday. The Whitfield Foundation was preserved by board vote on Tuesday. Claire signed the restoration order with her father's old fountain pen. Sunday night, mid-July. She drove west across the mountains alone. She parked the rental car at the curb outside a low cedar house on the outskirts of Asheville and walked up the gravel path. The porch light was on. She knocked on the door with empty hands and nothing to prove. Daniel opened the door without surprise. Lily stood behind him, holding a new crane. "Yellow this time." "Dinner is on the table," Daniel said. It was a simple meal. Cold pasta salad. Roast chicken Jenna had taught him to make in his 2nd year of widowhood. Cornbread. A pitcher of lemonade with mint. Lily pulled Claire over to the bookshelf in the living room and showed her each crane in turn. 37 of them, each with a story. The one her father had folded after counting Saturn's rings on her first telescope night. The one she had folded after her first day of 2nd grade. The blue one was for the day she had counted 9 planets at the Science Museum and then learned that Pluto did not count anymore. The smallest crane was no bigger than a thumbnail, folded out of the silver wrapper from a stick of gum at a hospital waiting room. Lily did not say which hospital. Claire did not ask. She held out a half-folded square of yellow paper to Claire. "You do this one with me. This is the new person crane." Claire sat down on the rug. She tried to fold paper for the first time in 36 years. Her fingers fumbled. Lily laughed and showed her again gently. They started over. Daniel stood in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel over his shoulder. He did not say anything. He just watched. He had not stood in his own kitchen doorway and watched something like this in a very long time. He did not move. He let the moment last as long as it could last. When Lily finished, she put Claire's lopsided crane on the top shelf above all the others. "Yours stands above," she said. Claire smiled the way she had not smiled in years. Lily turned to her father. "Is she staying for dinner, Daddy?" Daniel looked at Claire. "If she wants to." Claire said, "I want to." Late that night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel and Claire sat on the front porch with 2 glasses of iced tea on the floorboards between them. Fireflies were rising in slow yellow pulses from the long grass at the edge of the yard. The summer air carried the smell of cut grass and something faintly like jasmine from a neighbor's fence. They did not talk for a long time. His left hand rested on the wide porch rail. Her right hand rested next to it. They were not holding each other's hands. Only the smallest edges, the outsides of their pinkies, touched at one point on the painted wood. He did not move his hand. She did not move hers. A single firefly drifted up between them, lit once, and was gone. 6 months later, January in Asheville. The Blue Ridge wore a clear, cold light. Silver frost lay over the long meadows above the French Broad River. The air came sharp through the lungs and clean. Whitfield Holdings had been restructured. 12% of the company's equity was placed in an employee profit-sharing trust. The foundation had returned to full operations. Its first new program of the year was a physics scholarship for rural high school juniors in North Carolina. 28 applicants had already submitted in the first month. One of them was a girl from the feeder district who wrote in her essay that she had once watched a teacher launch a water rocket from a soda bottle and decided that night that physics was the closest thing she had ever seen to a language she already knew. Claire had not moved into Daniel's world. Daniel had not moved into hers. They had met in the middle. She had taken a year's lease on a small cedar cabin 10 minutes drive from his school. He still taught physics to 9th and 10th graders 5 days a week. She drove to Charlotte twice a month and worked from the cabin the rest of the time. On a Friday afternoon in late January, the elementary school auditorium hosted its first semester recognition ceremony. Folding chairs in 8 rows, yellow stage lighting against the cold gray-white outside the windows. Parents and grandparents and 1 or 2 younger siblings filled the room. Lily was called to the stage to receive a certificate. Most diligent student, 3rd grade. She held the paper in both hands as she came down the steps. She did not run. She walked straight to the front row, slid between Daniel and Claire, and sat down. 1 small chair between 2 adults. Daniel reached into the inside pocket of his coat and took out a paper crane. He had folded it the night before in the kitchen after grating. It was white. It was very small. He set it into Claire's hand without saying anything. She put it in the inner pocket of her coat, against her chest, the same way she had carried the first one all those months ago. That night, alone in her cabin with the wood stove going, she took the crane out and carefully unfolded it. He had written on the inside surface in careful teacher's handwriting, "You came pretending to be poor. You stayed because you finally felt rich. D." She read it twice. She did not cry. She refolded the crane along the same lines and set it on the desk her father had used for 40 years, next to the photograph of her parents. Outside, a fine new snow was beginning to fall over the mountain ridge. The next morning at dawn, she stood at the window with a cup of coffee. The light came up slow over the Blue Ridge, pale silver fading to pale gold. Down the road, Daniel would already be at the kitchen table, grating papers with Lily eating cereal beside him. He did not know she was watching the same sunrise. She did not need him to know. She had come to expose a stranger. He had come because his sister had pushed him. Neither of them had been looking for the other. That was the only way they had been able to find each other.